What is up, everybody? JP here, back with another video. Today we are doing the UFC 313 recap of Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. We're going to go through the main card and the prelims. So let's get into the main event reaction, Pereira versus Ankalaev. So I think my biggest takeaway, as we all know, Ankalaev won the decision. It was pretty boring. The biggest thing I have to say is Ankalaev performed very well. Maybe it might not seem like that because it wasn't as entertaining, but to me, the biggest takeaway was his execution of the game plan. He brought up of a really good game plan. His coaches prepared him well for this fight. Defending the leg kicks well, even though he was standing with Pereira for a lot of the first half of the fight, we didn't see him as affected by the leg kicks as much at all as we did with him versus Jan Blachowicz. I mean, of course, we all know versus Blachowicz, he was standing on one leg at times, on the other leg at times. At one point in the fight, he was hurt on both legs. We didn't really see that with Pereira as much as we thought we would. That just goes to show he has been working on his leg kick defense. He has been improving in that area of his game. Looking into more of his game plan, we saw him pressuring Pereira the whole entire fight, which is something that we haven't seen many people do at all, and that really seemed to affect Pereira. With pressuring Pereira, he seemed to not be as comfortable striking. We kind of saw this with Izzy versus Strickland. I think that's a really good comparison. And after that fight, people were saying how Izzy looked off that night, or that wasn't the same Izzy. I don't know, man. That might have been the same Izzy, and that might have been the same Pereira, as much as we might not want to think that. I think it's because of Ankalaev's pressure, and especially with his takedown threat. Pereira moving back and was very uncomfortable because of the takedown threat. He wasn't able to let go of his hands and kicks as much as he would have wanted to. Although one thing we have to note is Pereira's takedown defense. I mean, this guy literally did not get taken down in this fight. If you told me that Pereira wouldn't even be getting taken down and he would still lose, I mean, I don't know if I would believe you in any world. That sounds pretty insane. Magomed Ankalaev goes 0 for 12 on takedowns. I think Pereira even had tried a trip of his own for some reason. That didn't work. But crazy to think that Ankalaev did not land a takedown and he still won. A lot of people are mad at Ankalaev because of his performance and kind of how boring it is, and I agree. Obviously, it wasn't a very entertaining fight. However, you can't get mad at Ankalaev. I mean, this is really the only way you're going to beat Alex Pereira. We saw Jan Blachowicz do it, and he didn't even win, but that was the best performance we have seen in the light heavyweight division versus Pereira. He pressured Pereira, walked him down, and that was a big key for Ankalaev, because when you're walking someone down, it's a lot easier for you to shoot takedowns, even though he didn't land any, versus when you're backing up, it is 10 times harder to impose the wrestling game on your opponent when you're backing up all the time. One way Ankalaev was also creating space and pressuring Pereira was the great use of his front kick. This is something that Strickland kind of uses. He uses more of a teep kick. If you watch this fight, Ankalaev a bunch of times pushed Pereira back with a front kick right into the stomach. This kept him going back, like I said, kept the pressure on Pereira, never really let him get going with his hands, and especially with the takedown threat. I think that ultimately subdued Pereira a little bit, and countered the crazy offense that we normally see out of Pereira. Now, going over the scoring, I had round 1 going to Pereira. I think the champ edged out a close round. Round 2, we know Ankalaev. I had Ankalaev winning the second round before he hurt Pereira, so that definitely sealed him the second round. It's crazy. Ankalaev literally, the most hurt somebody was in that fight was Alex Pereira, and it was from the striking, believe it or not. Whether that has to do with the takedown threat or not, it probably does. That's why you see a lot of grapplers are sometimes able to outstrike the strikers, like Marab did against Piotr Jan, is because of the takedown threat. It causes them to be always thinking about the takedown, and they always got to keep their hands a little bit lower just in case they shoot. And so they get a little bit outstruck. And we saw that with Pereira. He got hurt in the last 10 seconds of round 2. Round 3, I think ultimately was what the fight came down to. Round 4 was clear to Ankalaev. He mixed in the grappling kind of just holding up against the cage, but Pereira didn't do much in the clinch against the cage. He threw some knees, but it's always tough to say that these guys aren't working. Obviously I've never been in that position in a UFC title fight, but Pereira wasn't throwing as much at all as we normally see out of him. And like I said, the cage control of Ankalaev, he wasn't doing much, but he was doing enough to get him some points and steal the 4th round. The 5th round was very similar to the 4th round, and one judge even gave Ankalaev the 5th. I think Pereira might have edged it out on damage, because yes, damage counts over control time and takedowns. If you have to land damage off of that takedown or damage off of that control time for it to count towards points, in my opinion. So yeah, Ankalaev winning rounds 4, 3, and 2. I gave Pereira 1 and 5, so that would give Ankalaev 3-2 advantage on the scorecards, and that's basically what the official decision was. It's 49-46 for one judge and 48-47 for the 2 other judges. Unanimous decision. Once I heard that 4-1 scorecard, the first one Bruce read out, pretty much knew it was Ankalaev. Yeah, let me know what you guys scored it. I know some people think it was kind of a robbery and Pereira won, but maybe, who knows, that might be a little bit biased judging. It honestly would have been better. Definitely would have been better for the division future if Alex had won. Obviously, he's one of the best champs we've ever seen in the UFC, which how much this guy fights, how much he knocks people out. He's entertaining. He's fighting every 3 months. He's stepping up on short notice. We rarely see that out of a champ. Alex is like the perfect champ, and nothing against Ankalaev, but he's going to be a worse champ than Alex, and most people are. And if he had won, maybe we would have seen that Aspinall fight or that Jones fight, but that could still happen in the future. I will say one thing, and something I've been seeing out there as well from other people, is I'm pretty sure Dana was waiting on this result to make the Jones-Aspinall fight. Obviously, we want the Jones-Aspinall fight more than anything right now. And I think Dana was waiting to see if Pereira had actually won this fight. Maybe they would have done the Jones fight, as crazy as that sounds, that Aspinall wouldn't even be getting another title fight. So in that case, I'm a little bit happy that Ankalaev won or that Pereira lost, because now we should definitely see Aspinall versus Jones, which I think Dana keeps on confirming that it's going to be in the summer. Aspinall seems to be more confident in it. We just need to get Johnny Jones in the cage. So, yeah. Even though I was saying this to my brothers when I was watching it with them, in the first round or two, Ankalaev was literally standing with Alex, and he was just going in a leg kick battle. I mean, I'm saying to myself, this is the worst game plan ever. I mean, if you could pick one way to lose on purpose in a fight versus Alex Pereira, is to, number one, stand with him, and number two, especially for Ankalaev, is trade leg kicks. I mean, it's crazy now that I think about it that he was up, 3-1 in my opinion. I'm thinking, how is this the game plan? He shot once at the end of round 1. I don't think he shot at all round 2, but he still managed to get the job done. So I know I was praising his game plan and his execution, and that's definitely true, but the beginning was a little bit confusing for Ankalaev. Moving on to the co-main. Spent a lot of time on that one. Gaethje versus Fiziev. This was such a great fight, guys. Was it as good as the first one? It was literally the same exact thing, to be honest. The main reason people were picking Fiziev in this fight, and a little bit of my reasoning too, as I also picked Fiziev, was Gaethje's chin. I mean, we kept talking about the damage he took versus Holloway, and you really could not just ignore that when breaking this fight down. What we saw from Gaethje on Saturday night was a completely fine chin. Fiziev landed some really nasty shots, a few great head kicks. I remember one huge hook. I mean, Gaethje just ate it. I'm thinking, I mean, we all thought Gaethje's chin would at least be a little bit worse. I'm not saying he'd be Bobby Green, but we thought it'd all be a little bit worse. But no, I mean, he almost looks better. It looks like normal Gaethje out there. And I was honestly pretty shocked that Gaethje's chin would hold up this good. I mean, Gaethje's longevity is just absurd. And now we're talking about a potential title fight, Dana was saying, which I don't like, but it's insane to see Gaethje with that loss versus Holloway still winning this fight and still in the title picture. This guy's longevity is just insane. I mean, how long before this guy actually loses like 2 in a row? It's actually ridiculous. I don't like the title shot that Dana was talking about. I mean, he's on a 1-fight win streak. We kind of saw it with Poirier. He beat Benoit Saint-Denis, and he gets a title shot versus Islam and all that. That was a very good fight, and I was there in person for that. I mean, Islam was minus 500. I don't think Gaethje would do any better or any worse. I don't really see him as a huge threat to Islam. I mean, Islam is one of the best fighters of all time, and he's the pound-for-pound number 1 right now, easily. So I don't like that title shot. I'd rather see Gaethje versus someone like Dan Hooker, someone like Ilya. I mean, that would be absurd. There's so many options for Ilya. Gaethje could be one of them. Either way, we got to talk about Gaethje's knockdown in the second round. Fiziev did win the first round, a little bit of grappling. He had him in an inverse triangle in the first round. Who saw that coming, right? He knocks him down in the second round with a beautiful uppercut. Held his neck, pounded the right hand into his chin. You see Fiziev's eyes stare off into the distance, and he just falls to the ground. His legs go completely gone. And one thing that I noticed in that knockdown is he got hit with the uppercut, and the uppercut was Gaethje's best weapon in the first fight. I mean, I thought Fiziev would make a little bit of an adjustment from the first fight, but Gaethje really poured on the uppercuts in that third round. That was Gaethje's initial adjustment in the first fight. Was in the third round, which was his best round. He started using the uppercuts efficiently inside instead of going striking outside and over the top. That really gave him a lot of success versus Fiziev in the first fight. And we saw it in the second fight too. The uppercut knocked down Fiziev, did even more damage than the first fight. So right when I saw that, I was like, Fiziev, you got to make that adjustment. But obviously, I'm sure he has more fight IQ than me. So yeah, that is the co-main, Gaethje versus Fiziev. Very, very similar to the first fight. Fiziev wins a close round 1, and then Gaethje takes over round 2 and 3. Feature fight, Turner versus Bahamondes. I knew I should have picked Nacho, man. I knew I should have picked him. Jalen Turner retires after the fight. They're striking on the feet for a little bit. Turner gets the takedown, is doing some damage. Bahamondes he just gets him in a triangle. Turner, I feel like, had a chance to get up. He had all the time in the world to stand up and put Bahamondes on his feet. I guess Turner didn't want to. Turner's not really grappler. He has some submissions, but I mean, who would have ever thought that this fight would end in a submission and half the fight would be on the ground? I mean, it's like I picked Turner, but nobody thought that this fight would end that way. So Turner ends up retiring after the fight. I mean, it didn't really shock me as much as I thought it would now that I think about it, but he's 14-9 So I mean that's that's a bad record, especially to be in the UFC in general, but to be top 15, 14-9. If I ever knew that he was close to retiring, he said in the post-fight press conference that he's been thinking about it for the last year. I mean, it would have been an easy Bahamondes pick, but it is what it is. Man, Jalen Turner's, I like him a lot. He's a cool fighter. That Dan Hooker fight was great. He's going toe-to-toe Dan Hooker, and I guess he's retiring now, so wish him all the best. Bahamondes, a great prospect in the lightweight division, which is the most stacked division in the UFC, as we already know. Man, they're going to give him somebody pretty good next. Although, what is he going to be, about 12 or 13 in the rankings? I don't know who they'll give him. I'm going to make a video next about the matchups to make after UFC 313, so go check out that video after you watch this. But yeah, Bahamondes should be a scary guy in this division, kind of replacing Jalen Turner as that really tall guy in the lightweight division. And although it was a great performance and he got the bonus for it, I mean, it wasn't on the feet, so we don't really know yet how good Bahamondes' striking is against the top 15. So hopefully in that next fight we'll see more of it for him. Lemos versus Lucindo. This was an absolute snoozer of the year. I mean, I picked Lucindo. I wasn't confident in any of these picks, to be honest, gents. I mean, it was criminal. All these were pick'ems besides Mauricio Rufy, and I definitely got that one right. So, I mean, this was a snoozer from start to finish. They even ended the fight 5 seconds early, which I've never seen before, which is pretty funny considering it was this boring of a fight. But round 1, Lemos is just laying on top of Lucindo pretty much the whole round. Round 2, the same exact thing, doing a little bit of damage, but nothing crazy. Lucindo ends up taking her to the ground in round 3, gets reversed a little bit. I think Lemos won unanimous 2-1. That seems about right. Nothing really of note here. Next up, the first fight on the main card, Bobby Green versus Mauricio Rufy. These fighting nerds are so incredible right now. I mean, I don't know if we've ever seen a rise to just greatness by a singular gym in such a quick amount of time. I mean, this fight ended quick in the first round. Some people thought Rufy would have a little bit of trouble with Bobby Green based on his performance versus James Yontop, where he took him to a decision. A lot of people thought he lost the second round. Bobby Green, although coming off a bunch of finished losses, looks good versus Jim Miller and is just a veteran of the sport, and people expect it to be a striking match. Let's be honest, it was going to be Rufy all day. I had Rufy winning easy. I don't know if anybody expected this KO, though. Spinning heel kick KO. Beautiful, beautiful KO. Probably going to be KO of the year, and it's only March. I mean, lands flush on the left side of the temple. Bobby Green goes out cold for about the 5th straight time in his last 5 fights. I mean, he went out cold versus Patty, even though that was a submission. Out cold versus Jalen Turner in one of the worst stoppages ever. He went out cold another fight. I feel like that I'm forgetting. And he's out cold this fight as well. I think it might be time for Bobby to retire. Either way, an absolutely insane KO by Mauricio Rufy, and I don't know who has the most potential out of these fighting nerds. People say it's Rufy. I think the fighting nerds might have even said it's Rufy. He might be that guy. This is also the best division in the UFC. I can't wait for this guy's future and the opponents and the crazy striking matches that this guy's going to put on for us. So, now on to the prelims. Van versus Saruya. Joshua Van is probably my favorite fighter right now on the UFC roster. This guy is so good. He's literally a flyweight Max Holloway. You might have heard that before. He's got about 8 significant strikes per minute. I mean, the UFC average, at least for ranked guys, is 3 to 4. Aspinall has around 8. This guy's unbelievable with his volume, with his output. 59 sig strikes is by far his career low. This was a disgrace of a performance from Ray Saruya. I mean, I'm making the comparison to Kron Gracie. He might even be worse. He's a young kid, so I don't know if I can get on him too much, but I mean, this was just a terrible performance from Saruya, or it was just that good from Van. I mean, I had Van winning this all day. I don't know how the odds closed at minus 135. I mean, that was free money. I did bet on Van. I don't know how the odds are this close. Who's betting on Saruya? And how do you see a path to victory for him? That was the worst case scenario for Joshua Van, and he still gets it done with a unanimous 30-27. He tried to be Merab Ray Saruya, 4 for 21 on takedowns. He didn't throw any punches, and when he did, he barely landed, if not at all, and every time he got hit, he just went straight for the takedown, which Joshua Van stuffed because he has great takedown defense as well. Joshua Van is so good. His boxing, some of the best in the division. He's one of the best strikers, if not the best strikers / boxers in the division. I'm saying that right now. His body shots are so great. He does that versus everybody. I think he set a record for body shots in a fight. I mean, the kid is so good, and he's so young as well. He's 23 years old. He's 6-1 in the UFC. Got to get a ranked opponent next. As for Ray Saruya, I don't even know what to say. I mean, just it reminded me a lot of Kron Gracie. Just terrible striking, terrified on the feet, and trying to dive at the legs at any moment. Anyways, on to the next fight, Bruno Pereira versus Armen Petrosyan. I wanted to go Pereira, but I went Petrosyan, and that doesn't even make sense, that statement, but I thought that Petrosyan could outstrike him through the course of 3 rounds. I definitely thought the KO was possible for Bruno Pereira, not so much for Petrosyan. And Pereira did have the grappling advantage. Did I think there would be a submission? I didn't. Something that Petrosyan does, even though he's 9-5, he outstrikes all of his opponents. He outstruck Sharamagomedov, even though he got KO'd. He outstruck Bruno Pereira by almost double. He's just landing a ton of leg kicks. As you can see, 20 of 22. More leg kicks than head punches. So he outstrikes a lot of his opponents. He's definitely more volume. He doesn't have that much power. I don't know how Pereira was an underdog, to be honest. It was a weird fight. He gets a point taken away after 2 nut shots in the span of a minute. He comes back to win the first round, so it was probably a 9-9 first round, and the second round looked like to be Petrosyan gaining again on Pereira, but he gets taken down and subbed by Triangle. I mean, great performance by Bruno Pereira. He's looking pretty good. He's 4-2 in the UFC, 13-2 total, all by finish. So he's looking like an exciting fighter in this middleweight division. Next up, Carlos Leal versus Alex Morono. You have to cut Morono at this point. His physique isn't good. He just looks worse and worse at every fight at this point. Like I said before, I went to the Makhachev versus Poirier pay-per-view. He was on that versus Nico Price. That was one of the worst fights I've ever seen. It was terrible. The martial arts in that fight was atrocious. I mean, his gas tank is bad. He's winging punches. He looks gassed at every minute of the fight, even if it's the first round. Carlos Leal was a huge minus 850 favorite in this fight, and I thought those odds were really wide, but I guess they were justified because Carlos Leal just punched him. It was a punching bag. Alex Morono was for Carlos Leal, 79-46 strikes. Carlos Leal looks pretty legit. We all know he got robbed versus Renat Fakhretdinov in his debut. He might have been on roids, probably was, but even then, Alex Morono is a decent win. Maybe not at this point of his career, but a finish of Alex Morono in the first round. Carlos Silao is, I would say, already in the top 30 of the welterweight division. 2 more fights left of this 10-fight card. We got Myron Santos versus Francis Marshall. This was controversial, guys. Francis Marshall clearly won the first round. He hurt Myron Santos. All 3 judges gave him the first round. Second round and third round were pretty similar. The striking was pretty even. Marshall was mixing in the grappling, taking him down, holding him down. But Marshall was a little bloodied up, and some people are actually saying, contrary to popular opinion, that this was a big robbery, that Santos won 2 and 3 off of damage from his striking. So I would have to rewatch this fight back and give an opinion for myself. But when I was watching live, I thought Francis Marshall had won at least 2-1, maybe 3-0. And I was screaming. I thought, there's no way they gave this to Santos. This is a terrible robbery. But maybe after the fight, it seems like it was a little bit closer than we thought, and some people even have Santos winning. The first fight on the whole entire card, Ozzy Diaz versus Jordan Santos. Santos was minus 190. Look at the significant strikes on that, 135 to 131 in favor of Ozzy Diaz, the underdog. Talk about low level. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, this is the bottom of the middleweight division right here. These guys, the physiques aren't great. The technique isn't great. The cardio isn't great. They don't really do anything spectacularly. All that to say, it was a very entertaining fight, and that's what a lot of the more low-level fights bring, is very entertaining fights, especially with the heavier weight classes. And Ozzy Diaz gets it done. Santos, in my opinion, won round 1. I was watching this fight a little bit on and off. I thought Santos had won round 2 as well and gave Diaz round 3, so I had it 2-1 Santos, but all 3 judges gave it 2-1 Diaz. They all gave him rounds 2 and 3 and Santos round 1. So definitely a close fight, not a robbery to me. I thought Santos landed the little bit better shots, but both guys were landing great shots, to be honest. So this was a really good fight to open up the whole entire card, and very entertaining. So guys, that'll do it for my UFC 313 recap. The next video I'll be putting out is the next matchups to make for UFC 313. So if you're interested in that, go watch it and tell me what you think.